Anthony Joshua versus Alexander Povetkin. Let's talk about the fight. Well, this fight played out pretty much almost exactly as I predicted. That Alexander Povetkin, it being that this is a guy who's not only seasoned as a professional,
but as an amateur.
But he comes from the amateur background of the Olympic pedigree. It's like most people, that were waiting to see this fight. It's almost like they didn't realize that Alexander Povetkin is a gold medalist the way that Anthony Joshua is a gold medalist, the way that Vladimir Klitschko is a gold medalist. It's almost like these guys
didn't know that.
They let the tale of the tape and their respective ages tell the story of what they thought they were going to see.
Mm-hmm.
But I said it in my prediction video. Alexander Povetkin is not the kind of guy that you can afford to look past. That he's got a lot of the ingredients that it takes to give a taller fighter like Anthony Joshua, who doesn't have as much professional experience, he's got some of the ingredients to give him some problems.
In case you ain't know.
And we saw this early on in the fight, towards the end of the first round, that Alexander Povetkin, he landed a very interesting punch that tested the chin of Anthony Joshua. And Joshua was hard-pressed to not lose his composure, not become a slave to the moment, and stick to the boxing, because the boxing's what's going to win you the fight. Alexander Povetkin let it be known in the first round that he's not one to be trifled with, that he has enough power in spite of being the smaller and older fighter. He's got enough power that he can hurt Anthony Joshua if Joshua's not careful. He's got the kind of power that warrants respect. Thus, you've got to be careful with him. You understand? In that situation, if a guy lands a shot like that so early in the fight, it might warrant several different kinds of responses. Landing a punch like that hurts a guy, it might make the guy bit cautious,
gun-shy,
bit apprehensive, afraid to let his hands go, might make the guy gun-shy. Another scenario is it might make the guy want to get that back. Might cause a guy to lose his cool, start opening up more, and in opening up more, that would then give Alexander Povetkin the opportunities to land even more punches like that. Anthony Joshua had to be careful to not lean too much to one side of either of these scenarios. He maintained his composure and reaped the benefit of doing so. That's called poise, and believe me when I tell you that in that situation, poise counts. From the end of the first round and to the duration of the second, Alexander Povetkin let Anthony Joshua know that he's in there with a live body that didn't just come in there to get a check. And Anthony Joshua had to be careful, had to stay composed enough
to outlast him,
to not play Alexander Povetkin's game, because Alexander Povetkin, in spite of being the smaller, older guy, he's a tricky guy that packs the kind of punch that can drop just about anybody. We saw a very, very determined Alexander Povetkin throwing those leaping hooks that I talked about in my prediction video, looking to throw those hooks, and even if they don't land, he's still trying to get within range of the taller fighter. Thus,
might slip it.
You might get out of the way of that first punch. But after that, there's more coming, and Anthony Joshua had to be careful to not open up on this guy. We saw some very good spacing from Joshua, taking small steps back to stay just out of range of these punches, get under or around them. Making a conscious effort to not mix it up too much with Povetkin on the inside, because at that range, Povetkin's actually got the shorter, sharper shots. That's exactly where he wants to be. Thus, opening up on him there is not a good idea, and Anthony Joshua was very mindful of this. As the fight wore on, we see Joshua landing jabs not just upstairs, but downstairs, and I think that that's what made the biggest difference here. It's not often you see a fighter who's about 6'6" going downstairs, especially on a fighter like Alexander Povetkin, who's already a smaller fighter. More often than not, you see this kind of a discrepancy in size, and the taller fighter might resort to headhunting, whereas Anthony Joshua made a conscious effort to mix up the jabs, not just upstairs, but downstairs.
Keep him guessing.
And multitasking with the jab in this fashion, I think that's what made the biggest difference in the fight for two reasons. One is that you can't afford to headhunt Alexander Povetkin. The reason for that is, if you keep shooting the jab at this guy's head, he's going to time that jab.
Eventually.
And once he's got your timing down, what he's going to do is get under that jab and fire the overhand right. That punch could easily end the night if he lands it. Alexander Povetkin, he's a crafty fighter. If you keep trying to hit this guy in his face, he's either going to slip it or he's going to get under it and fire the overhand right. Anthony Joshua had to be mindful of this, because throughout the fight we saw that was a punch that Povetkin was determined to land. But by mixing up the punches, mixing up jabs to the head, jabs to the body, this keeps Povetkin guessing. The second reason that this was rudimentary to Anthony Joshua's victory is every time he goes downstairs...
To the body.
Every time he hits Povetkin to the body, that's taking a little bit more out of his stamina, wearing him down slowly but surely, just mixing up the punches, going upstairs and downstairs to keep Povetkin guessing, but at the same time, sapping his stamina. Sapping his stamina, thereby hindering his overall punch resistance. That these punches that are getting through, it's going to be harder and harder for Povetkin to weather them because he's getting tired. The first 6 rounds of the fight, you're going to have your hands full with Povetkin because he's fresh, the damage hasn't taken its toll, he's still got plenty to give out, plenty to dish out. But Anthony Joshua, I think what was the most intelligent thing he did in the fight was he made a conscious effort throughout the fight to target Povetkin's body. You know, knocking Povetkin out probably would have took a lot longer had Joshua not did this. And, if it would have took a lot longer, who knows what Povetkin could have made happen. But because Joshua, not just, he didn't just go upstairs, he went downstairs. Because he's a taller fighter, you don't expect that he's going to actually make a conscious effort to target the smaller man's body.
That was smart.
But doing that, going downstairs, you expect a tall guy to go upstairs, break some windows upstairs. You're not really expecting him to also go downstairs, flood the basement. You're not expecting that. But Anthony Joshua made a conscious effort to do this, and I think that had a big impact on when the fight ended. The mechanics that went into this fight, you understand, the overall aesthetic, it was very pleasing because, when you got a shorter fighter like Povetkin who's trying to close the gap, a lot of taller fighters will opt to deal with this by tying him up. Essentially, they'll turn it into a clinch fest whenever Alexander Povetkin closes the gap. Whereas Anthony Joshua, he didn't do this, and that made the fight more appealing. It was more entertaining that rather than just tying Povetkin up, Anthony Joshua kept just out of range of him. This lended itself to the entertainment value of the fight, that it's tense. At any given time, you feel like Povetkin's gonna leap forward and try to land a left hook. So, that tension lended itself to the overall aesthetic of the fight, and that's mostly in part to Anthony Joshua not clinching the guy excessively, rather staying just out of range of him. And in the fight, we did see Joshua land that trademark uppercut. Before the fight ended, we saw him land that uppercut, which hurt Povetkin. I think that's the punch that drew blood on Povetkin. And we also saw Anthony Joshua fire a very short right hand. You want to be mindful of the fact that the right hand was a short punch. He didn't load it up. It wasn't loaded up. It wasn't a long-range punch. It was a very short punch. Didn't have to travel very far to hurt Povetkin. That speaks to the power of Anthony Joshua's right hand, that it doesn't have to come from the parking lot for it to be a punch that'll do a lot of damage. Even at a short range, this is a punch that can take a guy out.
Finish him!
You want to be mindful of this in the future, because it speaks to Anthony Joshua's power. It speaks to the size of the punch that he packs, that even a short-range punch like that can cause a lot of damage. This is basically what I was hinting at in my prediction video, that the same thing that makes Povetkin dangerous is the same thing that might get him caught, that he's a very game, aggressive fighter, that he's going to open up at some point, and that's going to give Joshua the opportunity to touch him, because he's so insistent on standing in front of the guy. He's got to do it. He's the smaller fighter. There's no way you're going to win this fight from the outside, so Povetkin's got the right idea, but at the same time, it's going to require him to compromise some defense, and in compromising defense, he is subject to Joshua's offense. So with this, Anthony Joshua collects the scalp of yet another gold medalist like himself. Not only Vladimir Klitschko, but now Alexander Povetkin. And, this kind of a fight, it's the kind of fight that allows the fighter to grow. That he's not being, spoon-fed opponents that are catering to his strengths, that are there to basically make him look good.
Not this guy.
This is the kind of opponent that makes the fighter better from having fought him. So I very much enjoyed the fight. No over-officiating from the referee, thank God. This is something that a lot of people complained about in the Parker fight, that, the goddamn referee, what the hell is he doing? This referee, he let the action be nice and even. He wasn't, trying to be your star of the show or something. So it was a very good fight. It was very entertaining. And to quote Anthony Joshua, I'm glad that the fight ended the way that it did. I'm glad he found his right hand, which, a lot of people complained was missing from the Parker fight. I'm glad he found that right hand, not just because because of, the Parker and Joshua fight, but also because of last week's fight. A fight that I would have preferred to have ended in a knockout because that would have been more decisive. I'm talking about the Canelo Alvarez versus Gennady Golovkin rematch. A knockout on either side of that fight would have dispelled a lot of the arguments, a lot of the bitching, the moaning, the crying. It would have took away from that because it would have been a decisive victory. I mean, there's not a hell of a lot to argue about if one guy knocks the other guy out. And I'm glad that Anthony Joshua actually ended this fight by way of knockout because he was under a bit of pressure to get back that luster, get back that it's the heavyweight division. We don't really want to see fights go to the cards in this division. We want to see a knockout. You're the heavyweight champion. We want you to look the part. And Anthony Joshua definitely looked the part. He looked the part against what is yet another top 10 guy in the division. Not top 10 in the alphabet rankings or any particular organization's rankings. Rather, he looked the part against a top 10 guy in the entire division, Alexander Povetkin. That makes 4 top 10 guys that Anthony Joshua has taken out. One being Dylan White, the other being Dominic Breazeale, the other being Joseph Parker, and the fourth, Alexander Povetkin. As you can see, the meteoric rise of Anthony Joshua is not smoke and mirrors. It's not opportunistic opponents that are making him look good. This kid is the genuine article, and at 22-0, he's already taken out 4 of the top 10s in his weight class, holds 3 of the 4 major titles. There are a lot of people on the other side of the argument that are working vigorously to try to disparage everything that Anthony Joshua has managed to accomplish in only 22 professional fights. But anybody that knows their boxing knows that this kid is the real motherfucking deal. And he's only getting better. He's only improving. After 22 professional fights, this guy is only 1 belt away from becoming the next undisputed heavyweight champion. And you don't get there
by chance.
You don't get to that point with smoke and mirrors.